everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. In today's video, we're going to preview regular season football action. It's week 1, San Francisco traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. This is going to be a really close matchup. There's so much to talk about in this preview, so let's not waste any time and let's jump right in. The last time that these two teams faced each other was all the way back in 2019. Now that day, the 49ers were able to get the win over the Pittsburgh Steelers in Levi Stadium. It was a pretty close matchup all the way through. The Niners offense had a number of costly mistakes, mainly in the form of fumbles. However, the defense held strong and we were able to eventually make enough plays to get the win. Now, the two plays that really stick out to me from that game are, of course, Kyle Juszczyk with that awesome stiff arm on Minkah Fitzpatrick, and then I think back to Jimmy Garoppolo hitting Dante Pettis in the red zone for the touchdown to basically seal the win that day for the 49ers. But let's flash forward to now, 2023 week 1, and both teams naturally are very, very different. 4 years on, massive roster turnover pretty much every year in the NFL. However, a lot of the key players are going to still be here for the 49ers and also for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Looking at these two teams though, and the thing that really strikes me is just how similar these teams are. Now, if you had to ask me, I would say that yes, the Niners, roster in general is going to be more talented than the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it's not that far apart. So if you look at this roster very quickly, quarterbacks, both teams, second-year quarterbacks, they showed some good things in their rookie years. Can they build off of that? Both teams have talent at the running back position, tight ends, wide receivers. Again, I'm going to take the Niners' weapons over the Steelers, but the Steelers' weapons, nothing to, sneeze at. Like, they're really, really good players on Pittsburgh. You're looking at a guy like George Pickens who might be primed to have just a massive breakout season. Then you look at the defensive side of the football. Steelers have some really good players there, of course. TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minkah Fitzpatrick. They paid Alex Highsmith some big money too. They brought in and kind of revamped their cornerback room with Patrick Peterson, drafting Joey Porter Jr. The Niners, of course, we have a lot of talent on defense ourselves. Just bringing back Nick Bosa on the massive deal, Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead, Warner Greenlaw. We know all the players for the 49ers. But overall, the thing that really sticks out to me is just, these rosters are very, very similar. I think the Niners, in terms of just straight up talent, have an advantage over the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I do think there are a number of things that will play into the Pittsburgh Steelers' advantage, if you will. So the first thing, of course, is having that home field advantage week 1. To me, it's a massive, massive deal. And the Niners have just traditionally struggled week 1 ever since Kyle Shanahan has taken over. This will be his 7th season as head coach of the 49ers. So far, Kyle Shanahan in week 1 matchups is 2-4. If we look at those 2 wins, one was back in 2019 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if you remember that game, it took a long time before the Niners were really able to separate themselves from the Buccaneers in that game. Then you think about the other win, which is in 2021 over the Detroit Lions. Niners built a massive lead and then almost blew it to the Detroit Lions. And that was a scary game. But overall, I think that this is going to be a close matchup. And what I want to look at now are the 5 most intriguing matchups, player individual matchups between the Niners and the Steelers, which I think will determine the outcome of the game. To me, arguably the most important matchup in this game is going to be how starting right tackle Colton McKivitz handles edge rusher TJ Watt. Now, if you look at TJ Watt, he's a guy who got injured last year, and he's heard all offseason long and all year long about, of course, Nick Bosa winning Defensive Player of the Year, how great Micah Parsons is, and both of those players are amazing in their own right. But I think TJ Watt is going to want to try and remind the NFL of just how great he really is, and he's going to want to come out firing on all cylinders. And the big thing is going to be, how do the 49ers, and in particular, how does Colton McKivitz handle TJ Watt? Now, it's going to be really interesting because sometimes Shanahan can be quite stubborn in his play calling and will just be like, Colton, you got to just do your job, and that's fair enough. However, if TJ Watt is dominating early on, then I think you could see us maybe leaving in George Kittle, maybe leaving in Charlie Werner, maybe having running backs do a little chip block to slow down TJ Watt. Maybe we do some plays that are going away from TJ Watt. Maybe we run the ball right at TJ Watt and try and just really get him beat up a little bit. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Now, in this matchup, there's no question you have to give the advantage to a guy like TJ Watt, considering what he's done throughout his career. And Colton McKivitz is, he started a couple of games in his career, but it's going to be a lot to ask of him to try and hold down a guy like Watt, who's just ridiculously talented and really, really good. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup to see how do the 49ers scheme away from TJ Watt and to try and limit what he can do to disrupt the 49ers offense. The Niners have a lot of different things that they can do in terms of quick passes, get the ball out quickly to get into the hands of guys like Debo and McCaffrey and Kittle. But I think how the Niners choose to attack that will be really intriguing. In this matchup, though, absolutely, you got to give the advantage to a guy like TJ Watt. The next matchup that we're going to talk about is going to be the 49ers wide receivers taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers cornerbacks. Now here, I do think the Niners have a pretty significant advantage. We know how good Debo Samuel is, and he is looking in fantastic shape, especially compared to the shape he was in last season. You're looking at Brandon Ayuk, who's maybe similar to George Pickens, poised to have just a massive breakout year for the 49ers, and then good depth with Jawan Jennings and Ray McLeod, who Steelers fans will be familiar with. Now, you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers cornerbacks. The starting guys, Levi Wallace and Joey Porter Jr., Patrick Peterson in the nickel spot. Now, with Levi Wallace, he's a very, very solid cornerback. Last year, did really well with the Pittsburgh Steelers in his first year there, coming over from Buffalo. 4 interceptions, only a 73 quarterback rating when actually targeting Levi Wallace, so he actually did a really solid job last year. I think the key here is going to be looking at a guy maybe like Joey Porter Jr., the rookie, first NFL regular season game. I think we're going to try and throw a lot of different things his way, a lot of different route combinations, make him have to think on the fly, really doing like vertical stretches, horizontal stretches, double moves from guys like Brandon Ayuk, throw physicality at him like Debo Samuel and Jawan Jennings can do. And then you look at the nickel spot. Now, Patrick Peterson, overall, he's had an amazing career with Arizona, then with Minnesota. Definitely towards the tail end of his career, maybe we try and get guys like Ray McLeod with that speed, that shiftiness to break free from a guy like Patrick Peterson. Also, you can throw the physicality of a guy like Jawan Jennings or Brandon Ayuk at him in terms of blocking, maybe throw him off his game. But I do think here, the Niners have a significant advantage over the Steelers. The big question is going to be, can the 49ers offensive line block the Steelers edge rushers and interior defensive linemen long enough to exploit the advantages they have in this aspect of the game? Let's now take a look at the next key matchup, in my opinion, and that's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive tackles up against the 49ers edge rushers. You look at the Steelers offensive tackles, you have Dan Moore Jr., Chukwuma Okorafor, Niners edge rushers, Nick Bosa, Clelin Ferrell, Drake Jackson, Austin Bryant, Kerry Hyder. So a pretty extensive list right there for the 49ers. And to me, the obvious advantage here is in favor of the San Francisco 49ers. You look at Nick Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year, up against guys like Dan Moore, who struggled last year, and so did Okorafor. Those guys rated really, really poorly according to PFF. Now, I know that's not the be-all and end-all, but those guys combined gave up 10 sacks last year, and I think the 49ers, with Steve Wilks, they're going to find ways to really test those offensive tackles. They're going to have their hands full, even dealing with just Nick Bosa and Drake Jackson, or just Nick Bosa and Clelin Ferrell. But throwing in those stunts, throwing in those blitzes is really going to test those offensive tackles, and I think here the key is you get after Kenny Pickett, force him to make some bad decisions in the not so great weather, which we're likely to see on Sunday. And I think that could be a massive advantage for the 49ers. But absolutely here in this particular matchup, got to give the advantage to the 49ers. The next key matchup might be one that you're not necessarily expecting, but it's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers run game against the 49ers linebackers, run defense, what have you. Now, a big reason why this is a key matchup for me is, again, talking about the weather. There's supposed to be, a decent amount of rain scheduled in Pittsburgh for Sunday. But I think for me, as maybe a slight concern for the 49ers defense, when you look at the preseason, the Niners struggled mightily against the run. Now, that's going to be a huge concern moving forward unless the 49ers can fix that. Now, I think that we absolutely have the capabilities, especially when you consistently have guys like Bosa, Armstead, Hargrave, Warner, and Greenlaw out there, but that is something to keep an eye on. That's something that did concern me throughout the preseason. So it's a big matchup. You have Najee Harris, a guy who in his own right, really good running back. The Steelers, I think, are going to try and, play that ball control offense, limit what the 49ers offense can do, try and limit the Niners' ability to put points on the board, control the game, control the momentum, control the pace. And if they can do that, I think that gives the Steelers a really good chance to win this game. Now, right now, Steve Wilks and this defense is a little bit of a mystery. We know all the players, but how will the defense look under Steve Wilks compared to D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh? When Ryans took over for Saleh, the defense didn't miss a beat. Will that be the same case under Steve Wilks? We all know Steve Wilks is a very highly regarded defensive coach. It's hard to, you can't just gauge preseason and say that's just how it's going to be. Preseason is for trying different things out. A lot of backup, third string, fourth string players who don't even make the roster. But that is a big concern. And a big matchup, in my opinion, is how the 49ers can slow down the Pittsburgh Steelers run game. Not only just because you want to limit what they can do in terms of controlling the clock, but if you can put them in bad situations, 2nd and 11, 2nd and 9, and then you allow the edge rushers, which we talked about just previously, to be able to feast on Kenny Pickett. He's going to have to hold the ball a little bit longer. That gives our defensive line more time to get to Kenny Pickett and to cause problems. So this is a big thing to look at in this matchup, and especially in the first half. How well do the Pittsburgh Steelers run the ball? And if they are running the ball effectively, how can the 49ers adjust and slow down that run game and really control the clock, which is such a big thing to do when you're on the road and the weather isn't great? The next matchup and final matchup that we're going to talk about is going to be the special teams of the Steelers against the 49ers. Now, to me, the obvious advantage here is going to be to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Really solid kicker in Chris Boswell, really good returners. Calvin Austin, he is a guy who can be electric in the return game compared to the 49ers. Now, we did get a big boost with Ray McCloud coming back to practice this week and in line to play for the 49ers on Sunday in Pittsburgh, which is a big match for him, a bit of a revenge game for Ray McCloud. Now, the big concerns, though, it's going to really come down to Mitch Wishnowsky didn't look great at all in preseason, a number of really bad shanks. How is his confidence moving into the regular season? Playing in Pittsburgh, not great weather, but also the bigger concern is Jake Moody. Let's just be honest, didn't look good in preseason at all. Missed a number of field goals you would expect him to make. Kickoffs and just kickoff return coverage was solid, but the kickoffs I wasn't a big fan of. I'd like to see a lot more touchbacks. Maybe that was planned by Brian Schneider just to see how good the kickoff return coverage was looking in preseason games, but it is an area to look at. But really it comes down to a guy like Jake Moody and the leg and the foot of Jake Moody. This game is going to be really close. I think it's going to be really close because it's a tough matchup. It's on the road. The Niners typically struggle early on. So if it comes down to Jake Moody, personally, I'm not going to be feeling really comfortable about it. I'd much rather have a guy like Robbie Gould, but we all know kind of what happened there. So the advantage here definitely to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their return game, I'm going to be really curious to see Calvin Austin. He was a guy that I really wanted in the draft out of Memphis. So there you have my 5 key matchups in this game. Now the next thing I'm going to do is give you guys my prediction for Week 1 Niners against the Steelers. And I think with watching this video, you'd probably lean towards me giving the advantage and the edge to the Niners. However, in my prediction, I'm actually going to have the Pittsburgh Steelers winning this game. It's going to be a close game, but I'm going to have the Steelers winning 24-21. This game is going to be an absolute slugfest. 2 just great franchises, historically speaking, and 2 teams which I think are really good right now. I think the Steelers a little bit underrated heading into the 2023 season. A lot of people, talking in the AFC North, and justifiably so, about the Bengals and the Ravens, and maybe the Browns will have a big year. But I think the Steelers are a very good team. They're really well coached. We know how great of a coach a guy like Mike Tomlin is. And the big thing too is the Niners, we struggle Week 1. just under Kyle Shanahan, whatever it is, it can take the Niners a little bit of time to get ready. So I think you factor that in. On the road, maybe not great weather. I'm going to have the Steelers coming away with a close win, although, and it's just one of the things where that last point we were talking about in the matchups, I just don't trust Jake Moody right now, and I think that could really come back to bite us week one. However, I'm hoping for a 49ers win, obviously, but in my prediction, I am going to have the Pittsburgh Steelers winning 24-21. So guys, I really do hope that you enjoyed my preview for this week one matchup. It's going to be a really, really exciting game. I'm just so glad that real regular season football is back. Of course, I will be streaming this game live starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. local time for me, 1 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. I hope all of you will join me for that because we always have a good time on the live streams. Hopefully the Niners can prove me wrong and get the win. That would be really, really awesome. Also, if you enjoy this content, do consider dropping a like on the video, share the video on social media, drop comments and your thoughts in the comments section below. But you know, guys, before I head out of here, I am going to say two things, and that is the butt counts, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.